Welcome to another deep dive. I'm Brad,
And I'm Jennifer.
and we're here to help you sift through the noise and figure out what really matters.
That's right.
Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Laneway homes in Burnaby, British Columbia. Seems like you're considering building one maybe for family or as an investment property. We've got Burnaby's How-To Guide for Laneway Homes. It's hot off the press from September 2023.
Yeah.
We're ready to break it all down for you.
It is a really comprehensive guide, but it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're just starting out.
Yeah, before we even get into dreaming up floor plans, is your property even eligible?
Right, the basics. Burnaby has some specific criteria, and it all starts with zoning. Good news is they have this amazing tool. It's called Burnaby Map. Just pop in your address, see your zoning like that.
Easy.
But the key is you got to be in a single-family dwelling zone to qualify.
So no laneway homes in a condo complex.
Got it. Let's say you do have that single-family home. What else? Well, you need access. So you need either an open lane behind your property or a local street to the rear yard. That's essential.
That makes sense. You need to get in and out of that laneway home. Speaking of access, I saw the guide mention something about properties near streams.
Yeah. Properties near streams might have extra restrictions to protect those waterways. It's definitely worth checking if your property falls into that category.
For sure.
Yeah.
So zoning, access, no streams. What about ownership? Can you sell a laneway home separate from the main house?
Good question. And the answer is no. Laneway homes in Burnaby, they have to stay under the same title as the main house.
Okay,
One property, two dwellings.
got it. So no quick flips for profit. But what if you want to bring in some income? Are rentals allowed?
Rentals are totally fine. Long-term rentals are great. In fact, that's one of the big draws for homeowners. But short-term rentals under 30 days, those are a no-go.
No Airbnb empire then.
Got it.
What about actually living there? Do you have to live on the property in either the main house or the laneway home?
Nope, not at all. You can live off-site and rent out both the main house and the laneway home. But you'll need a rental business license from the city. A little bit of red tape.
Okay, so we've got those basic eligibility requirements out of the way.
Yeah.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
What can you actually build?
All right. Burnaby limits you to a maximum of 3 units on a single lot. So that's the main house, a possible secondary suite in that main house, and then the laneway home.
Okay, so really maximizing your property. But there are limits to how much you can build.
Exactly. Burnaby has something called lot coverage, which dictates how much of your land can be covered by structures.
Lot coverage. Sounds technical.
It is a little bit. Think of your lot like a giant puzzle, and each building is a puzzle piece. All those pieces together, the footprints of the main house and the laneway home, they can't cover more than 45% of that whole puzzle.
Okay, so you're not just cramming buildings onto every square inch, leaving some space for greenery.
Yes, exactly. It's not just buildings that count towards that limit either. Paved areas, sidewalks, driveways, patios, what they call impervious surfaces, those can exceed 70% of your lot.
Okay.
It's all about balance, making sure there's enough space for that rainwater to soak into the ground.
So where on the property can you actually put this laneway home?
Well, the guide is pretty specific about that. It's got to be in the rear yard, and they've got these things called setbacks that dictate how far it needs to be from property lines and other structures. It's like a buffer zone.
Okay, so no squeezing it in between the shed and the fence. What kind of distances are we talking?
You need at least 1.2 meters between the laneway home and the lane, or side property lines. That's about 4 feet, enough for a pathway or landscaping.
All right, breathing room from the neighbors. What about the main house? How far back does the laneway home need to be from that?
From the main house or any other structures, the setback increases to 2.4 meters, almost 8 feet.
Okay, so we know where we can put it, but how high can we build? Can we go sky high?
Not quite. 2 stories is the max. But the actual height limit depends on your zoning. For most zones, a sloping roof can go up to 7.6 meters, about 25 feet.
Okay.
Flat roofs are a bit more restricted at 6.7 meters or around 22 feet.
So sloping roof if you're picturing a grand laneway mansion.
Exactly. And keep in mind, if you have a basement, that counts as a story. No sneaky extra levels.
But I did read something about a height bonus if you meet certain energy efficiency standards.
Yes. If you hit those higher energy targets, they use something called the BC Energy Step Code. You can add an extra 0.5 meter.
So going green lets you build higher. I like that. Let's talk size. What's the smallest you can build and what's the biggest?
The minimum is 32.52 square meters, or about 350 square feet. It's not huge, but it's additional living space.
I can picture a cozy little studio apartment.
Exactly. And the maximum size is capped at 20% of your lot area. but it can't be any bigger than 140 square meters or about 50 or 507 square feet. And they actually have a handy table in the guide that shows you typical lot sizes so you can see what's possible.
Okay, so lot size definitely plays a role. I know something that's important to a lot of people, especially in Burnaby, is being a good neighbor.
Yes.
Does the guide offer any advice on that?
It does, yeah. A whole section dedicated to design recommendations that promote privacy and being neighborly.
Okay.
They're not rules, but things to consider, especially if you want to keep those relationships good or attract quality renters.
All right. Give me some tips for a neighbor-friendly laneway home.
Okay, well, first think about the windows. Orienting windows, entrances, and balconies towards the lane helps create natural privacy barriers.
Yeah. And I've seen some use that frosted glass, the translucent glazing for windows that face neighbors. Is that something they suggest?
Yes, they do. It lets the light in but keeps things private. Speaking of light, they also say to use downlit features for any exterior lights higher than 2.4 meters. That's about 8 feet to minimize light pollution.
So it's the little details.
Yeah.
Everyone appreciates a considerate neighbor. What about the roof?
Yeah, they suggest positioning the roof peak, so the highest point towards the interior of your lot, and having it slope down toward your neighbor's property. That way it minimizes any sense of it looming over.
Okay.
Improves rainwater drainage, too.
It's functionally and aesthetically pleasing? Anything else?
Landscaping. Planting trees and shrubs along the lane creates a natural screen and adds some beauty to the neighborhood. Win-win.
Yeah, it's like your own green oasis. Speaking of oases, let's talk parking. Is that a requirement?
Yes, one parking spot on the property accessible from the lane, either uncovered or carport, and has to be equipped with an outlet for level 2 EV charging. They're serious about sustainability.
Wow. So even if you're not driving an electric car yourself, you're future-proofing.
Exactly.
What about for people who prefer two wheels? Any mention of bike parking?
While it's not mandatory, the guide really encourages homeowners to think about it. Bikes, strollers, all those things. Maybe some detached sheds, attached bike ports, even bike lockers.
Great advice. Now let's talk about those extras that can make a laneway home really nice. What about outdoor space and amenities?
It's not a rule, but they recommend at least 4 square meters. That's about 43 square feet of private outdoor space for the laneway home.
Okay.
Could be a patio, deck, small yard, something to give them a little piece of the outdoors.
Love that. Covered entrances seem like a must-have here in BC.
They do. The guide actually suggests that. Protect them from the elements.
Makes sense. What about practical things like garbage and recycling?
They recommend a dedicated area for those bins located away from windows. Nobody wants to wake up to that.
Good point. Keeping things tidy. Now let's shift gears and talk sustainability. What does the guide say about eco-friendly laneway homes?
This is where Burnaby's commitment to the environment really comes through. Laneway homes are required to meet the BC Energy Step Code Level 3. Basically, that means they have to be about 20% more energy efficient.
20%. Break that down for me. What does that actually look like in terms of building?
Think better insulation, airtight construction, high-performance windows, all those things that help to reduce energy consumption and keep those costs down.
So it's a win-win for the planet and your wallet.
Exactly.
Now, we talked before about the height bonus for exceeding energy efficiency standards.
Yeah.
Does it say anything more about those higher step code levels?
It does. Step code level 5 or the zero carbon step code EL4, those will allow you to get that extra height, and it shows a real commitment to sustainability.
So it's like a reward
Yeah,
for going above and beyond. What about rainwater management?
definitely. While they allow a maximum 70% for impervious surfaces, they really encourage you to reduce that even further. Promote water absorption, things like green roofs, rain gardens, permeable paving.
Love those ideas.
Yeah.
It's like turning your backyard into a mini ecosystem. What about plants? Any recommendations?
They definitely stress choosing non-invasive, eco-friendly plants, native species.
Makes sense. Working with nature, not against it.
Right. And they also highlight living walls that are designed to support climbing plants.
I've seen those.
They're amazing for insulation, noise reduction.
So it's like a vertical garden.
Yes,
I know Burnaby is really serious about trees. Are there any regulations?
absolutely. They have a tree bylaw. If you need to remove a significant tree during construction, you'll probably have to plant replacement trees. And they encourage you to keep as many trees as you can, plant new ones if you have space.
Great that they're protecting trees.
Yeah.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Eligibility, design considerations, parking, sustainability. Let's say we've absorbed all this. We're ready to move forward. What does it say about getting started?
Well, first, you need to secure a building permit.
Right.
That's how Burnaby makes sure your laneway home is safe and meets all the requirements.
So no rogue construction projects. What's involved in getting that permit?
It's a multi-step process. First, you need to apply for engineering pre-application approval. That's a check to make sure your project's feasible before you do the full building permit application.
It's like a trial run.
Exactly. Once you have that pre-approval, then you can move forward with the official building permit application, which means submitting detailed plans and drawings.
Okay, time to get those blueprints rolling. What happens once you submit the application?
The city staff will review your plans really carefully, check for compliance with everything. They might have questions or need some revisions.
So there's a bit of back and forth.
Right. But once they're happy with everything, you'll get your building permit and you're good to start construction.
That's the moment of truth. What about inspections?
You'll need inspections at various stages to ensure everything is being built to code. And then once the final inspection is complete, you get your certificate of occupancy.
Time to move in. Now, what happens if, for whatever reason, you just can't meet all the regulations? Any wiggle room?
If you have a legitimate hardship, you can apply for a variance.
But
That's basically a request for an exception to the rules.
interesting. So there is some flexibility built in. What kind of things would qualify for a variance?
Well, they typically give them for minor encroachments into setbacks, maybe some height adjustments, or changes to the number of stories depending on the situation.
So it's not a free-for-all.
Yeah.
What about density? Can you get a variance to add more units?
No, variances for density are not allowed. They're pretty strict on that one.
Okay. No squeezing in extra units.
Yeah.
Then. I know that Burnaby have a lot of beautiful heritage homes. Are there special considerations for those properties?
They do. Burnaby has a heritage program, and they offer incentives to owners of heritage homes to help them preserve them.